Gautam aka the Seeker of Wisdom. I'm a manifestation coach, and in this video, we're going to be talking a little bit about inner child healing. Now, before I do so, I'd like to remind you guys I am available for coaching, so I offer only monthly email and DM coaching. The link will be in the description down below for an FAQ page where you guys will have all the answers you need, and thereafter, you guys can reach out to me via Instagram or email for pricing information and to figure out what plans may be suitable for you. I also have a Facebook group where I upload resources from time to time, as well as you guys can ask me questions anonymously if you wish to do so. Make sure that you answer the two questions and agree to the group rules, otherwise, my moderators will decline you with feedback. So, save yourself some time there, guys. I also have a mailing list where I post articles from time to time, as well as my latest offers for coaching. And last but not least, I also am relaunching my new Manifest SP course, which is designed for veterans and beginners alike, which is designed to bring you from the start of your manifestation journey to the end of your manifestation journey with regards to an SP. And also, it gives you the blueprint as to, okay, here's what you should do in different situations, and I have been beta testing it, and the feedback is really amazing. So I'll be launching more details about it really soon, so be sure to be on the lookout for that. So without further ado, guys, let's get to it. What prompted this video was people sometimes ask me in my manifestation Q&A as well, like, hey, what's your take on inner child healing? And I've been noticing that this kind of theme has been popping up really, I wouldn't say often, but it has been consistently popping up, if that makes sense, right? Like, a lot of my clients are older than me, right? So for context, I'm 23. Many of them are in their 30s, 40s, and beyond that as well sometimes. And one surprising thing I noticed is, regardless of whatever that they are manifesting, right, be it an SP, wealth, or health, and so on and so forth, one thing sometimes they often bring up is inner child healing, or just the concept of childhood, right? And this is really a very prevailing one that I've noticed personally, that I've seen this like pop up so much, and it really made me realize like how important childhood is. And even from my own experiences, like, I had things that haunted me from childhood as well, right? And I thought, you know what, at one point it'll just fade away as life passes by me, and it'll all be fine, and yeah, I'll just pass by that phase. But as I grew older and older, I guess, it didn't. And I thought maybe, I remember things really well. Like, one of the things is that I have a very good memory, so I remember everything from, like, maybe say like 3.5 years old till now. Like, I can really remember a lot of details. Like, I would just, for example, I once recognized my kindergarten classmate in my secondary school. So for context, we were like 12, 13 back then. So like, in kindergarten, I was like 5, right? So I recognized that person like 8 years after that. And this person, she went back, she looked at like her group photo, and she was shocked. She was like, how on earth did you recognize me? Right? So that's how like good my memory is. So I always thought like maybe it was just me who kind of holds on to those kinds of things. And my clients, however, proved me otherwise. And many of them would talk to me about like things that happened in their childhood, and how it still kind of had an impact on them one way or another, right? And how it kind of um, like shaped them who they are in their teenage years, and they have after that, and how it kind of just kind of seep through their adult years as well. And so, like, with a lot of my clients, like, I work on inner child healing, right? Talking about it, and just going back to that and revising that and so on, right? And a lot of this ultimately boils down to a few things, right? A lack of recognition, a lack of love, and fear of doing things wrong, and also just having that inferiority, that others are always right, I'm always wrong, and those kinds of things, like inferiority complex, basically, the others are somehow better than me, right? These are things that kind of overarchingly they pop up. And like, one thing I'll always say is like, and that kind of ultimately trickles down to self concept too, if you really think about it. So like, for like a lot of people, what I do is I sit down with them and kind of just explain to them just what it means to kind of overcome that, and how they can overcome that, right? For a lack of recognition, it's very simple. you simply just look at your achievements from childhood all the way until like where you are right now in life, right? So you basically take a look at all your achievements from childhood, and even if it's not a big deal to say your parents, or even if it's not a big deal to anyone around you, if you think it's a big deal, it's a big deal, right? I once had someone say, you know what, like I feel like you're just, that's not the way. It wasn't a big deal. I was like, no, it was to me. And I always come at it from that perspective, because at the end of the day, the only person's recognition and validation you really need is you. So that's one thing, like always like list out your achievements, pat yourself on the back, be proud of who you are, right? And a lack of love, right? So for this, normally what I would say is like have inner conversations with your inner child, right? Talk to that little person. For me, I always visualize my inner child as that 7-year-old self or 8-year-old self, because I feel like a lot of things happened for me, especially during that point. Like it started kind of slightly before that, maybe around 5, but like when I was 7 and 8, like those were like, we are talking like '06, '07. That was some of the hardest years of my life, and I would not even wish any of my worst enemies to go through that. And I had a pretty decent life. I don't get me wrong, I don't mean to paint a bleak picture of any sorts, but I wish it was better. Like sometimes I just look back at that childhood days, and I think, you know what, and I had to revise that a lot in my mind, and I had to talk to my inner child basically. So what I would do is I would visualize my inner child, and I would just talk to that person, right? And the reason why I started to do this at one point was I saw kids wearing my school uniform, like my primary school's uniform, and walking, right? So I've had two schools in my primary school, so I transferred at one point. So when I saw my first primary school's uniform, like that just completely like shook me. Like I was like, at that point when it shook me, I was like 20, right? So this was a couple of years back, and I looked at that kid and I'm like, oh my goodness, like it just kind of struck me. So I had to like sit down, um, and I had to talk to myself. Like I visualized that childhood self, and I asked him, like, I'm so sorry, like, XYZ happened to you, like what happened, like how are you feeling? And I just kind of like gave him a big hug in my mind, right? And it really healed a part of me that I never recognized existed. And I really told myself, like it's fine, it's all right, like you have gone through that, but you're safe now. That's the main thing I told myself, is you are loved and you are safe right now. Like you are protected, right? You don't have to feel threatened by the world around you, right? And on top of that, I love you, right? I love you for who you are, and you're great. And that's one thing that we all often feel, right? Like I mentioned earlier, like the feeling like others are always right, for example, and like feeling like you're not enough, you could always do better, and like putting all those kinds of pressure on yourself, right? So I basically told myself like, hey, you know what, you're good. And this is what I always tell my clients as well: talk to that childhood self of yours and give them a big hug. You can even physically hug yourself, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that. Or you can just hug your bolster, if you will. Like, if you can just close your eyes, visualize your childhood self, and like hug your bolster, like whatever floats your boat in that regard, right? But the idea is that you talk to them, you tell them that they are loved, cherished, and supported, and that they are safe, that they are safe within, right? Our inner child is always there within, right? Like I always tell people, like, you know what, we are just grown-up kids, no matter how old you are, right? 25, 30, 45, 50, 55, how old you are, right? Like I always think about it this way, right? If a son is 60 years old and the mother is like 90, right? Do you think the mother is going to see the kid as a 60-year-old guy? No. To her, it's always her baby boy, right? Same thing here. Like, always she recognizes that inner child in him, right? She recognizes, all she sees is her baby boy. And I want you to see it for yourself, right? See that inner child in you, recognize that part of you. And what we are doing is that we are healing that part of us by recognizing that part, by acknowledging that part, and by giving love to that part of us, and telling that part of us that they are safe within, right? And when you do this, and when you appear as the strong self for that person, it's also like your higher self taking care of you, right? So it's always like, it's definitely going to, help you to um, do well in all areas of your life. So that is why I feel like, it's not a prerequisite per se, but it doesn't hurt to do this, if that makes sense, right? And this is not like strictly like law of assumption. So but I use this, I sort of consider this in the realm of revision, if that makes sense. So I normally just, think about it like, I'm revising old events so that it doesn't affect me anymore. I'm ending the cycle there. So when I did this, I had to just, talk to myself, recognize it for what it was, and just let it go. I also had adults who mistreated me, and a part of that was me going back and explaining to my childhood self, like, hey, you know what? Yes, that happened, and I'm sorry it did happen to you because of them. And here's the deal: like, they were very unaware, and whatever they did was not a reflection of your capabilities in any way, or whatever that they told you was not a reflection of any of your capabilities in any way. And it's all good. Like, you are fine now, right? You always have been, and you always will be. Don't take anyone else's opinion into consideration. You're great, and I'm proud of you, right? And just giving that validation, right? And also, as for the last point that I mentioned, right, like, that inferiority complex, that, oh, others are always better than you. Where does that stem from, right? It's probably like from parents, right? And I know parents don't do it with the intention of doing that to a child sometimes, but it just kind of happens that way. We always kind of look up to our parents, and I think, I'm not stereotyping here, don't get me wrong, but like in the Asian side of things, especially like growing up in a brown household, and in a lot of my Indian clients as well, or just Desi clients as well, like, just, if you're Indian, Pakistani, I have a lot of clients from that region. So I'm not like targeting anyone, just so you guys know. But one thing that's kind of predominant in the brown culture, for example, is like the parents always um, come at it from a point of like, okay, we are right, we know what we are doing, you don't. And a lot of my brown clients have that kind of same kind of overarching theme as well. And we talk about it, right? Like, and like, I ask them, like, okay, if you feel like you're always wrong, right? Like, what makes you think so, firstly, right? Like, where does it come from? And then they always go back to that childhood self and all that kind of stuff. And it ultimately comes down to, always thinking that, you always underestimating yourself, because at one point you were just told that, that was not the case. But if you think about it, like, there's no such thing as like you are always wrong and everyone is right. Like, it just doesn't happen. Maybe once or twice, you may go wrong. As humans, we all do, but that's just not the case, right? um, I always see it as, well, what if the other person thinks that way too? And also, of course, like I said earlier, like, why are you putting yourself down? Why aren't you confident in your ability? If you believe something, why don't you, you know like, stand your ground, basically, right? Stand your ground. If you feel that you're right, like, if you feel that something is correct, stand your ground, and say it, like, you are always right, you can be right. Respect your opinion, right? Respect your opinion, just because that didn't happen to you back when you were a child. And that's why we do, inner child healing and stuff. So, tell your child, why do you think you're wrong? And if they say, well, because, my parents like said I was wrong, it's like, no, you are right, that is correct. And I mean, I'm not saying that for like all the things, of course. Like, there were probably things that as a kid you would have done wrong, and it's probably wrong. um, but like, for things that, you thought maybe that was not wrong, and they say no, but you were right. It could be anything, like, maybe you saw something and you told your parents, but they didn't believe it, for example, right? And people said no as well. Others didn't believe you as well, but you knew you were right, right? So maybe even part of yourself could say, like, right now, oh, maybe I just imagined something as a child and that didn't happen. But if you knew something happened, it did, right? So yeah, like, I just feel like, those kinds of things. Like, for example, for me, one interesting childhood thing was, I was actually wrongly accused at one point of getting money from someone. So this kid's mom came to the school, blasted me in front of other kids, and stuff like that happened. And I knew for a fact that I didn't get money from this kid. Like I knew, because at that point I was very stingy with money, that I'd have $1 for a year in school. Like I kid you not, like I had a wallet with like just $1, and like, because you don't need much, like, because especially if you're bringing food from home and stuff like that. And I remember my mom asking me, "Hey, did you actually do it? Like tell us, like, seriously." And I remember that leaving a scar within me, and I had to like talk about it like years later down the line, and really like say, you know what, like that did not happen. Like, and I wonder why you guys asked me when I said no. And like in those cases, like I was able to like clarify it with my parents like down the line as an adult. It was ridiculous because like I think I asked her when I was like around my 20s, like early 20s, like just a couple of years ago. And she was like, well, we don't know what happened, did we? Like I had to, as a mom, like, I needed to know the truth, and that's why I asked you. It wasn't like you were wrong or that I did not believe you, and I had to clarify it. So that's one way to go about it too, right? Go ahead and ask your parents, right? Like, but if you're not comfortable, give your inner child that kind of explanation, right? Hey, you know what, like they didn't know better, they weren't there, but how could they know? And just kind of explain it to your inner child, like how the adult world works basically. So that's one way I really found like healing. Another way that I sometimes that really works for some of my clients is just going back and imagining events where they see their childhood self just enjoying life, just doing things in the extreme opposite manner. Like let's say they didn't enjoy something, they go back to their childhood self and they just enjoy them. Like one of my clients, uh, she was staying with her aunt for a brief period, and her aunt, let's just say she sort of like restricted her behavior for a while, and she didn't feel like she really felt trapped in that kind of environment as a kid. And what she did was to go back to that part of her life, and she just like jumped around the bed as a childhood self, right? And that healed so many things about of her, it really like like healed her, right? Like that part of her, and that really like was really helpful for her, right? So like just jumping around the bed, and and just like kind of healing that part of her life basically. And that was really very powerful for her. She felt really really good after that. So you can always do those kinds of things too, like going back and doing things that makes you really 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 happy. So yeah, so that's one thing you can do. And the other thing is doing things right now that you always wanted to do as a kid, and reliving your memories and just kind of healing yourself, like, hey, this is how far we have come, we are good right now, and I'm so happy, right? Like, okay, we have grown as a person, and just like patting yourself on the back and just kind of recognizing how much you have grown, and you just appreciate your childhood self, and you just appreciate you as you are right now for how far you've come and how much this child has grown basically, and just recognizing that, right? So one thing that I did not too long ago, was a couple of months back. If you're in my like my personal Insta, you will know this. Like I actually, there's this game called Halo, right? It's a very famous game, but I played the first one, right? As a child, I loved that game. I was 5, yeah, it was 2004. I used to play this game like a lot. And as a kid, I used to be scared of those monsters in that game, because this is a sci-fi game with a lot of like aliens and zombies and those kinds of stuff. So I used to be scared of some levels, and like I remember like I always give like the harder levels to my mom to play and stuff like that. So you know what, I was like, okay, I'm gonna play this game. After a while, like it wasn't like I did play the game like maybe like when I was like 11 briefly, but I didn't like complete the entire game, by the way. So there was just one part of me that said, you know what, just go and complete it, just go and download it, complete it, like just do it. And I did it, and as I was playing the game, all I could think about was my childhood self, like what was going through my mind when I first started to play this game. Like I love this game so much that I can actually recite the dialogues of that game, like the opening cutscenes and everything like that. So as I was playing that, like with my headphones on, everything, and I don't game much these days, to be honest. So I kind of stopped gaming when I was like 19 and stuff like that, and I don't have the stamina of a gamer anymore. Uh, and it takes a lot of energy to play games, by the way. So I played it, and as I was doing so, I was like just recognizing all the places in that video game, all the levels, and like all the wonderful memories I had playing it back then, and it just filled my heart. Like it just filled my heart completely, and I was just so happy. Like, and I never touched that game after that. As soon as I finished that level, I felt a deep satisfaction within me. It was like life has come full circle. Like I, as a kid, like I didn't understand a lot of those like things that they were saying and stuff like that. Some terms like ASAP, for example. Now I know it's as soon as possible. Back then I didn't know what was, and a lot of like military terms and stuff like that. Now I recognize them, and I'm like, so this is what it meant. So that is what it meant. And I just like I just enjoyed it so much. It was such an enjoyable experience. And I realized like I was telling this to another client too, and she did something similar. Like and she, like, I think you wanted to play basketball when she was a kid, and like she didn't, and she went to try it out, and she was like really happy. It's like, hey, that felt really good, right? So she was kind of shy, like we will make fun of her and stuff like that, but I was like, no, you go and do it with a friend or something. And then she did it, and it was like really really great, right? And these are things that really heals people. Like these are things that when these are exercises, when people do them, like I'm not even exaggerating when I say this, like people have tears in their eyes. Like some people just cry out loud, right? So these kinds of exercises and stuff like that can really really be emotional, guys. Like it can really be something that can really take a lot of energy at that when those things happen, but it's like so worth it. You will feel so much lighter after that, because you are letting out like years worth of trauma sometimes. So you guys try it. Give yourself your inner child that love, and and just heal that part of yourself. Because like I said, like like revising, right? Like when you don't revise something, you keep thinking about it, or the effects still come up over and over again. It just really kind of trickles down in other areas of your life, like SP or finance and things like that. Like one thing that really happened to me not too long ago was I, as a student, sucked at chemistry. And I always personified my chemistry teachers as like the bane of my existence, of my school life, my teenage school life, right? And not too long ago, like my friend and I were sitting down in a park. We were chilling. It was very really, really near my school that I studied in. My chemistry teacher walks by, and we went to talk to him, like and like we were talking. He was like, hey, what are you doing these days? And I told him I'm into this, and he's like, yeah, you know what, like sometimes you just, yeah, like studies aren't even important. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? And my friend just looked at me, because he has seen me through those phases, and he was like, that must have really healed you. Like that must have really uh, untied a knot for you, as he put it. And I was like, you know what, yes, it untied a knot for me. And just kind of hearing that and just kind of getting that closure. I know not everyone has that kind of opportunity to do that, and I know this was in my teenage side of things, but not my childhood self. But like it's kind of in that similar kind of vein. So yeah, like my point is, like if you have something that you guys want to talk to about with your parents or something, like no matter how old you are, right? Like just ask them, just tell them, discuss with them, if you can, of course, if you have that kind of relationship, of course. And otherwise you can just have that inner conversation with them, right? You can have that inner conversation with them, and you can ask them like, hey, why did this happen, or why did you guys say this to me, and that was, did XYZ to me, right? And you can also do it in your inner conversations. And one thing you can also do is do this with your SP. So you can actually imagine your childhood self, of your childhood version of your SP, and give them the love that they deserve. Because one thing that I've noticed is um, a lot of people often talk about, sorry guys, yeah, a lot of people often talk about or concerned about the issues that their SP have sometimes, right? Like, okay, this person is being XYZ because of what happened in their life, right? And so on and so forth. So what some of my clients do is they will talk to their childhood version of their SP, right? They will talk to that person and they will say, hey, it's okay, I'm here for you, we got this, you are safe now, you are loved, and I'm always here for you. And like just kind of going through that kind of loop. They will even introduce like their childhood self to their SP childhood version, which is like really lovely and sweet. And that's the power of imagination, guys. That's the power of imagination, if you know what I mean, right? Like these things, like really, the ability to imagine is a god within us. Like when Neville said those kinds of things, like it wasn't a joke. Like it's really powerful. It has the ability to change things, and make wonders, right? Like so, yeah, so you guys can always like do that. Talk to your childhood self, and talk to the childhood self of your SP, and kind of heal that part, so that when you like interacting with them and everything, you see them as that healed self, because they are now healed in your mind, right? And everyone is you pushed out, so if you perceive them as that, that's what they come as, right? So essentially, inner child healing is revision in depth, right? Revision explored in depth, right? It's like a subsection of revision. So when you just see it as that, like you're just revising things, you're just imagining where you're talking to your childhood self and like healing that part of you and so on and so forth. So that's what you're doing, right? So yeah, the idea is to give love to yourself, recognize yourself, and not feeling inferior to yourself in any to others in any way, and just coming at it from that perspective that you're always loved and you're always safe in your presence, that you're comfortable in your own skin, right? And when you like deal with all four aspects in that way, guys, it's really going to be a game changer for you guys, right? So yeah, guys, we have come to this end of this video. If this video resonated with you, be sure to drop a like and a comment down below. Turn on the bell notification so that you guys will know when I upload a new video every single week. Be sure to subscribe, guys. We are reaching 1K really, really soon. So if this channel resonates with you, be sure to subscribe, as it goes a long, long way for me. So guys, thank you for watching. Stay safe and happy manifesting. Peace.